What's up, Zoners? It is week 2 of Thursday Night Football. My Vikings are going to go all the way over to Philadelphia to get their ass kicked by the Eagles. And hey, do you want to know who to start for the Philadelphia Eagles during this ass kicking? Hang on for 7 seconds.
You can do it!
What's up, Zoners? This is Tyler, Big Turd Ward, and Banjo, the dog, coming at you live from my living room. And this is the Fantasy RZ. Today's episode. So just like I said in the intro, we're going to be doing play or pause for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'll be going over each position, including defense and kickers this time. So let's get straight into this. These are my notes. Let's review the over and under for this game. It is at 49, which is the second highest point total this week. The Eagles are favored by 7. The weather should be clear, 68 degrees, and 0 chance of precip. So first up, Jalen Hurts. I am pressing play on Jalen Hurts. I know he had a bad week last week, but dude, that New England defense is a lot better than what people are giving it credit for. I picked him up off of waivers. I'm not going to start them probably against Miami, but I think they'll be okay even against Miami. If you watch this show, you know that I do not like Baker Mayfield. Last week, they beat my Vikings. He actually threw 2 touchdowns. I know he didn't have a lot of yards, but still, he did better than I thought. The Vikings defensive coordinator is now Brian Flores, and I'm expecting maybe by game 6 or something like that, we're going to have an actual defense. That's about the time that it took him to turn around the Miami defense when he took over that team. The Patriots, who Jalen Hurts was stifled by last week, are always like top 3 in quarterback pressures. Well, dude, he was sacked 3 times with, the number 1 ranked offensive line heading into the season. Plus, he lost a fumble. And then, dude, on the other flip side of that coin, the Vikings couldn't even. They sacked Baker Mayfield once. They got rid of Zadarius Thomas over to Cleveland, and now he's killing shit. Sucks. Also, last year, week 2. The Vikings did play the Eagles, and in that game, Jalen Hurts threw for 333 yards, 1 touchdown, while rushing 11 times for 57 yards and 2 touchdowns, man. So he had an amazing game versus the Vikings last year. I expect him to be a top 3 quarterback this week. Next up, Kenneth Gainwell. I'm pressing play on Kenneth Gainwell if he ends up playing. He played 62% of snaps. He had 14 of the 16 running back carries and 4 targets. Swift played 28% of snaps, but had just 1 carry and 2 targets. So even though he was out there a little bit, they didn't even use him that much. Kenneth Gainwell picked up steam in the playoffs last year in the championship. I mean, dude, he looked amazing, and he has always been super efficient when he gets the ball. The problem is that he's that he injured his ribs, and so we are not sure if he's going to be playing this week. But if he does, be sure to start him. One scary thing is looking at Rachaad White's rushing total last week against the Vikings. You think that the Vikings would have some amazing run-stopping defense looking at that stat? But dude, Rachaad White had negative 38 rushing yards over expected versus the Vikings. That would have been the 4th worst, stat line or whatever of that category in all of 2022 over all running backs. So that was a historically bad running performance from Rachaad White. We can't really judge the Vikings run defense on that. Next up, DeAndre Swift. I'm pressing pause on DeAndre Swift if Kenneth Gainwell plays. So DeAndre Swift, I know he was drafted pretty high, dude. He only had 2 touches to Gainwell's 18. Boston Scott had 2 touches as well, dude. You might as well draft a fucking Boston Scott. He had 13 rushes for 52 yards and 6 receptions for 33 yards in 2 games when he was on the Lions last year versus the Vikings. So even in those games, he wasn't that involved. He has not played well against the Vikings in a long time. Probably never. So I'm only playing him if Gainwell sits, just because, like I said, this is the second highest point total of the week. The Vikings, I am not buying any of their defense right now. Not until later, hopefully. And yeah, dude. You got to start this running back on this with the top-ranked offensive line going against the Vikings. Next up, Boston Scott. I'm pressing pause on Boston Scott. I just said that he had DeAndre Swift, touches last week, but still, he did not get much of a snap count. Needs Penny to be a healthy scratch again for me to even have confidence to play, and I probably wouldn't do that, but I could see a Boston Scott 3-touchdown game, just to shit on people, because that's what happens sometimes with these teams. And Boston Scott, dude, every once in a while, he has a huge game, and he looks pretty good. And he's a popular waiver wire ad, and then it always amounts to nothing. And I wouldn't even bother picking him up, or actually Rashad Penny. We'll talk about that in a second. Just because it's only the ribs for Kenneth Gainwell, and apparently it's not that serious. If Gainwell was out for a long time, I'd probably pick up both of these guys. Next up, Rashad Penny. I'm pressing pause on Rashad Penny. Hell, dude, the Eagles pressed pause on Rashad Penny last week. He was a healthy scratch, which is fucking nuts, dude. Thinking about what they gave up for him and what he was once on the Seattle Seahawks. He 6 rushing yards per carry on average, almost like his whole career. I would just use him. I would run him into the ground until he got injured, and then I'd go to my smaller backs because I think Rashad Penny is an amazing running back when he's healthy. So he could kill it if Gainwell sits. I wouldn't bother picking him up. Again, Kenneth Gainwell will not be long-term. Don't worry about picking up these running backs. Next up, A.J. Brown. I'm pressing play on A.J. Brown. I know he had a down week last week, but he did lead the team in yards with 79 while having a 30% target share in this offense, even against Bill Belichick, where he tries to take away what you do the best. Like, I thought that was actually a pretty good stat. And then Mike Evans last week, so Tampa Bay's deep threat, he led the Bucs in targets. So, they looked at the Vikings defense and went deep often, yards, and then he caught a touchdown. So the deep threat for Baker Mayfield did well. Well, shit, dude, you better tell me A.J. Brown's going to kill it this week, because I like A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts way more than Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield. You should too. So last year he had 5 catches for 69 yards against the Vikings, and that was only his second game with Hurts. That could be his floor for this game. And I predict that he will be a top 5 wide receiver this week. So next up, Devonta Smith. I really wanted him on my team, but he was just going a little bit too early for me. And hey, he made me look stupid because he's getting touchdowns designed for him against the Pats last week. They were 5 yards out. Jalen Hurts rolled out, was staring at him the whole time. It was like a drag route or something. I couldn't really tell because the camera wasn't on it. But still, dude, it was designed for Devonta Smith, and it was perfectly executed. He got that touchdown. Last year, he had 7 receptions for 80 yards versus the Vikings, and I could see him, I could see both wide receivers having a 100-yard game and both having touchdowns. Next up, Dallas Goedert. You put the E at the end, and it sounds pretty cool, man. I am pressing play on Dallas. He was held to 0 yards on 1 target versus the Pats. So, dude, I mean, that was just such a good game plan by Bill Belichick. He had all summer to prepare for that. I mean, you do not want to give Bill Belichick that long to prepare for your team because shit like this happens. Last year, Dallas had 5 receptions on 6 targets for 82 yards versus the Vikings. That was a good game for him. And dude, Dallas Goedert is a top 3 tight end play for me like most weeks. I would be pressing play on this. Again, second highest point total of the week. Next up, Eagles defense. I am pressing play on the Eagles defense. Dude, the Vikings only scored 17 points last week at home versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now they got to go all the way to Philadelphia, have some cheesesteaks, fucking crack that Liberty Bell, and then get their ass kicked. Shit is not going to be good. And the Vikings only averaged 2.4 yards per rushing last week. Dude, like, I'm telling you, I need to pick up the backup for Alexander Mattison because Madison ain't it, man. I was telling you before the season, I mean, I'm just a Vikings fan. I get it. He's like going to be a running back 2 by default because of his opportunity. But man, put somebody else in there. Let's get some shit going, man. Madison's ceiling is just not there. Lastly, Jake Elliott. I'm pressing play solely because you can see this second highest point total of the week, and the weather is good. That is the show. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I earned a thumbs up. Hopefully I earned a subscription if you are not already subscribed. That helps so much, man. Help change our lives. Help change our lives. This is Tyler Big Turd Ward, and I appreciate you.